Hey, what's going on, guys? So, this concludes van life. Unfortunately, after 6 months, I have decided to end living in my van. It was a long 6 months, and to be fair, I didn't totally 100% stay in my van the whole time. There was a lot of in-between time when I wasn't working or doing anything that I was just like, what do I do? Spent a lot of time at Starbucks. Starbucks became my good friend. I was known by name at multiple locations, which is cool. I like to establish that relationship with a lot of different people because a lot of people were cool. And I tend to keep it a secret for most part. I wasn't super public about it, especially when I would go to places daily like the gym or to Starbucks. I just didn't want them to feel like I was taking advantage of them and, make anybody feel awkward about it. Because it really wasn't. It was just a unique circumstance. I am glad to get out of it though. At least my approach, the urban stealth approach. There's 2 layers to that. Urban meaning it's in the city scenario versus country or, traveling like most people do. I think I didn't reap a lot of the benefits of it because I didn't travel really anywhere besides back and forth from Orlando and occasionally Daytona. That was really the extent of my travels. And if I could do it again, I would say you should basically have an idea to travel, and because then you're saving money on hotels and saving money on food. If you're just doing this urban approach where you're just living your daily life, but in a van instead of in an apartment or a house, that kind of has its difficulties. The second tactic that I did was stealth. Stealth is when you park up somewhere in public. It could be a Walmart parking lot. That's the first assumption. Certain Cracker Barrels you can park at, although the one that I parked at, I got chased out of because it was shared parking lot with a lot of other businesses and they didn't own the parking lot, so they couldn't make that call. But a lot of times I just used neighborhoods. Now, this is the tricky part, and that's where you kind of have to know the area. And that's why when I would go to other areas, it tended to be a little bit more tricky because I didn't know the area, so I didn't know where I could get away with and where I couldn't. Because when I went to new areas, in the entire 6 months that I did it, I was chased out by security 4 times in 4 different places. And then I dealt with police twice. And usually the police would come when obviously there's no security. So that tend to be neighborhoods, because the problem is the solar panel just sticks out like a sore thumb. That's the dead giveaway. And, sketchy black windows. My windows are actually not that tinted, but it's the window inserts that I created that, they have shiny on one side and then black on the other, and that tends to be another giveaway because you just plain can't see into the back. And I'd also put this curtain, this blackout curtain that would separate the cab from the back area of the van. So usually when the cops would come, they would actually have to call for backup because they didn't have a visual inside the van. Which both times they were super cool about. I was in my legal right. I was allowed to be where I was. It was just busybody neighbors that would have nothing better to do but watch what I was doing. So that was annoying. And that was probably the biggest thing that I personally don't want to keep doing is it's pretty anxiety inducing to have people walking around your car when you're trying to sleep in it. I found that I would get this feeling that I was in like a fishbowl being watched sometimes. I would just get this like very like feeling of anxiety, and it just was unsettling. I don't know. I found it hard to relax sometimes when people get out of their cars, and it was usually when you hear them lock the car that you knew you were good, because that means that they're walking inside and they're not, you know, doing anything around their car anymore. But like when you hear other car doors open, or just, it's stressful. That was the biggest part that I really didn't like. The other way you can do it is if you like have a place to park on, you know, private land, or, you know, have a deal with somebody. That I would recommend. That even if you're not traveling and you're just staying put, because then you can kind of build it out. Like you can have, you know, a nice floor mat on outside your door, or you can have, you know, a little campsite. Like you can just build it out, you know, have an awning or something. There's a lot of different ways that you can like expand it, but obviously I can't do that. Another thing that I was doing that was making it more difficult was I was completely sealed off. Now, I had met some other, as I call them, van lifers along the way, because what's interesting is when you start living like that, you're kind of on the same wavelength as other people that are living like that, and you would be surprised who is living in their car. And it's so under the radar. They call it like nomads for a reason. It's really like in the shadows. And I never ever realized it until now. But now I can pick it out. I can tell you exactly who's sleeping in their car now. And cars, not vans, not, you know, these nice cargo vans with the air conditioning and the solar panels on top. Not everybody's fancy like that. Some people just do it in sedans. It's actually kind of wild. There was this one girl that I met along the way that she's just at Starbucks every single day, and yeah, she has a car, and I'm just like, wow, I'm surprised you can do it with like much less than what I have here. But even with all this, just the second hardest part was the heat. Like just getting through Florida summer. We're still in summer now because this is like the end of August-ish, and in Florida, that's just, as you know, awful with the humidity and everything. And when I said sealed off before, I mean I did not open my windows. I didn't crack the windows, nothing. The reason why was because that visibility layer, the blacking out the windows with the window inserts, was my security blanket. That gave me a sense of security of not being watched or anything. But as a result, I couldn't open the windows. And so that sucked heat-wise. Now, one thing I had to start doing, I tried sleeping, you know, all the way through the night without opening the windows or running the car, but I just had to start running the AC. And that's why it was so difficult to sleep, was because I would have to wake up like every hour and a half, 2 hours to run the AC for like 5-10 minutes. And, you know, then you run the risk of carbon monoxide and possibility of accidentally falling asleep with your van running for God knows how long. I only did that maybe one time, and it was kind of semi-intentional, just to see how much gas would actually burn. Surprisingly, I did the math. This van has a 20-gallon tank, and it actually doesn't burn as much gas as you think it does just idling. So I did the math, and I can run it for 40 hours straight if it's a full tank of gas all the way to E. So that was actually not too bad, but it did tend to be a good amount of gas. I found myself filling up pretty frequently, so maybe I would go to say like $100, $125 a week. But gas price is kind of ridiculous nowadays, and this van already doesn't get very good fuel mileage. So, you know, if you have a pretty fuel efficient car, then yeah, you could probably do it a lot easier. Another expense associated with this is having a storage unit, which was super critical, and I actually found myself using quite frequently, not only to get my stuff in and out, but to charge my batteries and to cook. you'd be surprised how difficult it is to find a space that you can cook without like having people like watching you and stuff. Like I've done it in parking lots if it's like, you know, you back into the space, your back's against a bush or something, but it also has to be not like a lot of traffic. There's a couple of spots that you can find that, but for the most part, I didn't do that too much. So actually going to the storage unit, especially in between the hours of when the office closed and when the gate closed where you couldn't type your code in to get in, that tended to be my window where you still had people driving around, and I don't think anybody ever spotted it because I had a way of like hiding. Don't ask me why I'm so sketchy about this, but it's just weird. It's just a weird feeling to do some things like that in public. You know, it's not normal. None of this is normal, but I made it work. I'm surprised. I'm actually proud of myself for making it 6 months. I originally said a year. I will make that confession. But personally, I cut the cord for multiple reasons. One was health. I didn't feel like my hygiene was as good as it could be, even though I was showering every single day. I didn't think that my health as far as food was concerned was good enough to where, yes, okay, I had a small refrigerator, and that was good for a while, but then I lost it, aka the heat killed it in my van because it was just too hot in the daytime. So it was getting like, I don't even know, I didn't even have a temperature gauge in here, but probably at least 115 degrees. So it was just fighting the heat and running down the batteries. And then the other issue was just fighting the constant power issue of like if it was raining a lot and cloudy, the solar panel wouldn't charge the batteries fast enough, so I'd have to go park at storage and like plug in while I was cooking and stuff. And thank God that saved my butt. And sometimes I would pay for like a campground just to get back to square one, but it's really difficult to find campgrounds that you're not spending $30, $40, $50 per night for. It's like, oh, I might as well get an Airbnb or a hotel, you know? And then the mental thing, yes, cortisol levels, you gotta keep that in check. I didn't like the whole anxiety thing, security aspect, because when you did get chased off by security, like cops would come and they would say, all right, like it's within your right to be here. They're just like checking you out to make sure there's nothing sketchy going on or whatever. I get that. And then I would just stay there. But then I was like, oh, but great, now the neighbors are definitely watching me. But I wouldn't go anywhere. But the security chasing you off, you had to leave. And so I was like, well, shit, what now? I was parked up at this hospital. And, dude, I'd gotten away with it multiple times, but tonight was different for some reason. And I got chased out by security. It's now the 4th time I've been chased out of somewhere. And to be honest with you, it's getting quite old. I don't know how long I can deal with this, to be honest with you. And then, like, it's cutting into your sleep. And here's another thing about it. When you live in your car, at least for me. Now, some people I've seen sleeping in broad daylight, like 10, 11, 12. And I'm like, I don't know how y'all be doing this, because with that whole anxiety note, I found myself having to leave and get up rather early. And so I liked this because I've found it difficult to wake up early. And by early, I mean, it's how seriously you want to take it. If you're very concerned about it, then you get up at like 5. If you're not too worried about it, you can do 6 or 7. Really, you don't want to go past 8. Once 8, now you're getting all the dog walkers around the neighborhood and stuff, and it's just, now you're running that risk of like somebody spotting you, because there's a certain like window where you gotta like get out, and you know, odds are you don't have shoes on, and that's always questionable. You don't want to be known as the barefooted man. And yeah, it's just, there's a certain, like when you're pulling your blackout out of your windows, it's just that moment of like transition that looks the most sketchy. Like, oh shit, there's a guy sleeping in the van there. Because It's sketchy when you get out the side doors, not the front doors. You can do it where you can like jump across, but I just hate doing that. Don't ask me why, I just don't want to do that. I did this because I got stuck with this vehicle. I financed it and then I lost the ability to keep making money with it, and I hated where I lived because I was living in the hood, and it was just not the greatest situation. So I chose it. I could have gotten to a new place because I still had my job at Amazon and stuff. And surprisingly, I worked for Amazon for like almost 2 months in this. I was surprised. And also, this is the length of hair that I made it to, because remember, I was completely bald in the beginning of it. Yeah, man, if you're gonna do this, here's what I recommend. For one, ventilation. Give yourself some alternate source of ventilation, because even if you have a lot of fans and even an air AC, you still have to have ventilation for an AC. That's why I never went with the 12 volt power AC. Also, it takes a crap ton of batteries and solar panels, which you got to worry about like charging those every single day if you're going to do that route. So yeah, that's why I never went it's because I had to stay in stealth mode. So, and also I was trying to keep this van sellable, so I didn't want to like do any like permanent damage, like cutting into the roof or any crazy thing like that. Insulate your refrigerator. That's another thing I learned from a guy that had been doing it for a couple years, is build like a little insulation box for your refrigerator so it's not getting all the heat beaten down on it. I would have done that had I learned that sooner, but it's not on the internet. I would build a bed that doesn't transition, or that transitions better than this one, because this one's a pain in the butt. Originally it was it's 4 pieces. It's like 4 18-inch or whatever the dimension was, and it articulates like this. So there's like a seat like right here, and then there's a seat on the back. The problem is the roof is so short that you kind of like have to like bend over to sit on it, and it's a pain in the butt to transition. So don't recommend that. I thought it would be a cool design, but it just didn't work out. Also, for your actual bedding, there's many different ways. The general size that I have found a lot of people use, it's quite different if you're going the whole sedan route, but if you're going the minivan at least route, the size is a twin bed. So you don't have to buy some weird dimensioned foam like I did, like just 5-inch foam. They call it memory foam. It's really not. You can totally just do a like memory foam mattress. Just get yourself a mattress, leave it in bed mode the entire time. Don't try to transition it. You can like get some like prop it up sort of situation if that works for you. But really, if you're gonna design one of these, start with the bed and build around the bed. That's really the most important and quite frankly annoying thing about this build in particular, is super uncomfortable. I always had back pain. The shelf was okay, not the greatest. Had to reinforce it a little bit more once we started driving around. I had braced it with some like L bracket braces, and they crack over time. It's just gonna happen. You put a lot of weight in it, your van shifts around and drives around quite a lot. That's gonna just get beaten up over time. Also, cure your wood. Seal it. I didn't have time to do all that. I was really pressed for time. I had to build this with working a full-time and part-time job at the same time. So I had to use every waking hour building this when I could. I didn't have time to seal the wood, but seal it. Cure it with something. The reason why is because if you don't, wood is semi-porous, meaning liquids and dirt and other bacteria can seep into the wood over time. And you don't want to do that, especially if you're going to be, taking care of your business in there, like just pee. I never pooped. Which sounds weird to say, but I never pooped in here. I just can't. I have a toilet. I have a portable one just in case of emergency, but I never did it. I always figured it out with like going to the gas station. I'm a man, so I can use a bottle to pee, but No, it's too small of a space. If it was like a full-size cargo van, yeah, okay, you can figure something out. But just with the bed and the food and stuff and the smallness of it, just, mm-mm. And especially if you're gonna be cooking on the wood too, like what I would do is flip up one of the panels of the bed and just like cook on there and then, you know, finish and then pop the bed back down. And this over time can get bacteria as well. I didn't have time to finish the floor either. I wanted to put some like nice vinyl, you know, something fancy, but I just didn't have time for that. So the core things that you start with is your bed. If you're gonna do the stealth approach, you have to have a way to black out. I personally don't recommend tinting because you still need to see out your windows. So if you go with some crazy like 5% tint or something that's illegal, you're kind of like not gonna be able to see out your windows at night. So keep that in mind. I personally prefer the insert route, but have some sort of way of mounting it to the window. Like be able to Velcro it or stick it somehow. I never did. I just kind of like pushed it in there, and when it would like fall down, that was another thing that would wake me up. The back one was the big one, and it would just go like, at night I would just hear it. It would make this sound like shh, and I can hear it like falling on my head, and it would be like boop, and then fall on my head. So I'd end up just like using my like camera tape from the film industry and just like tape it every night, and then like it would kind of stay, and it's just awful. Look, I know that if I put more money into this, I could make this better, and it would have been a lot more pleasant experience. It's not awful, but it could have been a lot better. But the whole point of doing this was to save money, not to live as comfortably as possible. So after a while, I was like, all right, enough is enough. I can't spend any more money on this. And then you just end up spending what it would cost to just kind of live in a room or whatever. So it didn't make sense. So that's why I kind of dug my heels in for upgrades or, you know, rebuilding things or anything. But ideally, you got to keep redesigning it, and figure out a new way to do it. Because you think it's going to work, but you can't deduce all of this in your, you know, house when you're thinking about this. It really doesn't make sense until you actually get inside of it and actually start trying it out and living with it. I built this in a month. Actually, I would say like 6 weeks, because it kind of carried over to where I had to come like here, for example, to finish it. But you can do it pretty fast. I would say if you're just doing it in your spare time, you could probably do a good design in maybe like 3 months. But it depends all on like how much time you're putting into it. So that's my 2 cents on van life. It's been fun. It's been real. I can say that I lived like this. It's a crazy story to tell. That's why I did it. Would I do it again? Probably not. But I mean, maybe if I made it really cool and I took it up north or something like that and used it for like vacations and stuff, maybe. Sure. Okay. But stealth in the city and urban, kind of living your existing life, but just in a van. Have a plan. Know where the hell you're parking. Have a good ventilation system. And plan your meal prep. Meal prep too. If you're not on top of your meals, it's very easy to slip into this just eating fast food all the time, and that's not good. So that's my advice. Thank you guys for watching. I know this is a little bit of a long video, but this is my final summary of all of it. So thank you very much for watching. And I'll let you know what the next thing is. Keep it moving.